Hello, I'm Tim Jones, and welcome to another edition of View from the Bleachers. Today, I would like to talk directly to all my fellow Americans out there. You know, there's a lot of wildly erroneous beliefs that many of you folks have about our good friends to the frozen north. No, I'm not talking about the people of Minnesota, albeit I admit that godforsaken state is frozen 9 months of the year. No, today's discussion is about Canada. And it's time that we bust some common myths about this great country. More on the other side. The United States shares a border with Canada that's 5,525 miles long. Or if you happen to be Canadian, that's 8,891 kilometers. Not that anybody really uses kilometers, mind you. But did you know that our border with Canada is the longest unprotected border in the entire world? But there are a lot of things you don't know about our friendly neighbors to the north. So let's get started. As someone who has been married to a Canadian for over 33 years, I think I'm an expert on appreciating the subtle cultural differences between our two great nations. I continue to be surprised by how little most Americans know about the great nation of Canada. For example, in a recent survey, when asked, "What's the capital of Canada?" 55% of Americans guessed Toronto. Another 25% chose Montreal, and 15% responded, "Could you repeat the question?" Well, the correct answer, of course, is Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Many Americans think of Canadians as beer-swilling, hockey-playing, toque-headed, plaid-shirted moose hunters whose favorite food is a beaver tail pastry covered in maple syrup. But the truth is, only a small minority of Canadians are actually moose hunters. Most prefer to hunt caribou. The meat's much less chewy. The true picture of Canada is much more nuanced and includes Royal Canadian Mounties officiating curling matches on ice skates. Yeah, that's much more accurate. The sad truth is that most Americans know next to nothing about our next-door neighbors to the north. So let's get the record straight once and for all. Here are 6 widespread myths, only 2 of which I've been personally spreading, about Canada and Canadians. Myth number 1. Canadians are just like Americans. While it is true that the biggest compliment you could possibly pay a Canadian is to tell them they're just like us Americans, the reality is they are a mysterious lot and oddly different from the typical American. For example, Canada's murder rate is less than 1/3 that of America's. Most likely because Canadians are too busy trying to locate firewood to keep warm to have spare time for killing in-laws and skanky ex-girlfriends. The USA ranks number 1 in the percentage of people incarcerated, while Canada lags way back at an embarrassing 128th. So while Canadians try hard to emulate Americans by attempting to speak our language and eating many of the same breakfast cereals that we do, the truth is that they are a freakishly pacifist, law-abiding, well-mannered society compared to America. If America is Homer Simpson, well then Canada is Homer's polite, well-behaving, slightly disapproving next-door neighbor, Ned Flanders. Here's myth number 2. It's winter in Canada 9 months of the year. Don't believe all the hyperbole. Have you ever been to Vancouver? This is a charming city. It was the host of the 2010 Winter Olympics, and it often has more than 4 months with little more than a dusting of snow on the ground. However, it is true that for much of the rest of the country, they don't see the sun almost at all between November 15th and roughly May 3rd. The nickname Frozen White North is a gross exaggeration. Well, that is, unless you're talking about the following provinces and territories: British Columbia, excluding Vancouver, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and none of it. Prince Edward Island, on the other hand, is surprisingly mild, especially during the first week of August. If it's an El Nino year, that is. Myth number 3. By law, every Canadian male must serve at least 2 years in the National Hockey League. Well, it is true that Canadians do love their hockey, but this law is simply a myth. Every year there are several thousand young Canadian males who simply do not possess the talent to get drafted to play competitively at the NHL level. Sadly, these males must serve their 2 years in the CCA, that's the Canadian Curling Association. Myth number 4, most Canadians live in igloos. Once again, this is a commonly misheld belief that is just wildly off the mark. Although that said, this is a picture of my wife's uncle's house in downtown Toronto. The truth is that most Canadians live in homes remarkably similar to those of Americans. In fact, you can hardly tell the difference. Hint, the Canadian home is the one with the polar bear in the backyard. You know, it's only Canada's federal prisons which are actually made out of igloos. You know, on a related note, recent studies have shown that prison escapes in Canada rise sharply during July and August. Prison officials are currently investigating possible causes. Myth number 5. The most popular form of commuter transportation in Canada is the Zamboni. Again, that's simply not true. To most Americans, the Zamboni machine is that truck on steroids that smooths out the ice between periods in a hockey game. Now, admittedly, in many parts of urban Canada, the Zamboni is a popular form of transportation, but mostly just for short trips to the local store. Its horrible gas mileage and lack of a roof make it impractical for most commuters. That's why most Canadians simply ice skate to work. Well, except for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who, as their name suggests, prefer to go by horseback. Myth number 6. The elderly are left to die alone on ice floes. Yet again, another gross distortion, although true in northern Saskatchewan and parts of Labrador. Most Kanekaluks leave their elderly out to die alone on ice floes, but they always make sure they are accompanied by their trusty sled dogs and are provided a nourishing last meal of a box of Tim Horton donuts, maple syrup, and a case of Labatt Blue beer. Canadians are nothing if not civilized. You see, the truth is, there are worlds of difference between Canada and America. They're almost like separate countries. For example, we have states, while Canada has provinces. Our temperatures are described in Fahrenheit. Canada uses some obscure system known as Celsius. We know how to spell words like labor, favorite, neighbor, and theater. Canadians do not. But there is one thing Americans and Canadians surely can both agree on. Both sides would be delighted for Canada to become our 51st state so we can commence drilling for oil in their pristine national parks. America welcomes Canada to join us, but only on the condition that you do away with that insufferable dual language requirement. We simply won't tolerate that. C'est impossible, monsieur. Well, that's the view from the bleachers. Perhaps I'm off base. I'm Tim Jones, and remember, if you like this video or simply feel sorry for me, please click on the subscribe button below and share this video with your friends or anyone you'd like to annoy. And for more of my humor, please visit my website, viewfromthebleachers.net. That's it. Bye for now. Thanks for joining me, eh?